heads up, this is a programming session, hands-on, so you need to be a CM developer. If you're not, you're still welcome to join, because the first part of this training would be like a theory, so then you understand what CmSym is all about, at least. You will need a laptop with a 9.5 workspace with custom developer on it. So go ahead and click that Get Latest button. And if you don't have the Wi-Fi password, here it is. All right. So it seems like we're starting. So
can I get you for a minute before we start?
Yeah.
The workspace, I can't seem to get it to work.
Your workspace doesn't work?
Yeah, it won't start.
Can we get some help with that? Yeah.
I get an error when I start.
So just so you know, I have a lot of colleagues backing me up here, so if you have any questions, they will be helping me out to answer them. So you get more one-on-one support. So welcome to the hands-on workshop. My name is Poh Guan. I'll talk to you a little bit about CmSym today. Has anyone heard about CmSym at all?
It compares directly to the
Yeah? Yeah. Okay. So that's good. First, a little bit about me. So who am I? I'm Poh Guan. I am born in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. I've been with Configura for 5 years. So right now, I'm working in Shenzhen in China to help start off the China branch. I'm a big fan of Dota too. Well, I have been working a little bit with core when I first started, and then later on I move on to customizations. So I know a bit of on both ends. So today, when I talk to you about CmSym, it's not so much from the creator's point of view. It's more like from a user's point of view, because I didn't create it, but I've been using it for a while. So, yep. So just an overview about what we'll go through today. So introduction to CmSym, what the hell it is, and motivation, why are we doing it? What is new? Well, this is because we've been developing CmSym for a while now, so this is an update to what we are working on currently. Where to get more information about CmSym. We have some documentation, and we'll share with you later. Yep, and some current and future plans. Where are we going with this? What are we going to do in the future? What are we going to extend? And then we move on to our workshop. Okay. So what is CmSym? So from the words of the creator, CmSym was originally designed to just be a file format, which is a successor to CM3D. But it has slowly grown to be a much bigger project. It's also now a scene graph API. So what that means is that it's an API that represents both 3D and 2D at the same time. So you know how in CM you have to code your primitive 3D and graphs separately, right? But with CmSym, you just do it once, and then you get both your 2D and 3D. And of course, the file format CmSym is a successor to CM3D. And there's a few benefits to that. We'll get to that in a bit. So why do we call it CmSym? Well, it's because we code in Cn, and ultimately it's used to represent a symbol. So it's just a quick way to mash it up. Who are the creators? So Jimmy West and Jonas Hittala they are the two main creators behind this. So they've been working a lot on this. Joran has been working a little bit with the Z scripting language behind. So, yep, so they're the ones who created it. Oh yeah, by the way, if you have any questions at any point, just feel free to interrupt. I can just continue afterwards. So, okay, so now we go down to the main concepts. So what is a SIM? Well, a SIM consists of SIM nodes, which is like a holder. So it can have parents, can have children, and then it can have components. And the components are the attributes, or kind of like the real thing, the meshes, the G material, transform, visibility, the things that describe what this is. So if you see on the graph on this over here, the squares are used to represent components, and the ovals are used to represent nodes. So just to get you a little bit familiar with this, because this will repeat throughout the presentation, that we use N0, N0 for like a node, and T is just a short for transform. So a node can contain transform, and a node can contain a mesh over here, etc. Shared nodes. So one of the things that we worked on is we made sure that nodes can be shared. That means if you look at this little drawer here, the knob can be shared. That means you only have to draw the knob once and then use it in two places. So what happens when you change the material of the knob? Then it changes in both places because they're shared. So like if you see over here, we have knob A and knob B, but they're just two nodes, but they both point to a node which contains a mesh mesh component. So in that way, a node can have multiple parents. And of course, it can have multiple children. Yes. Okay. The biggest thing about CmSym is that we're trying to do parametric in a model, and that's almost never happens before. If your customer comes to you and say, I have this work surface, it has like 7 widths and 3 depths. It's like, oh, give me like 21 models. Like, no, I only have one. Well, okay, give me 21 models. You have to do that, right? But with CmSym, there is a possibility now to just keep everything in one model, and we kind of embed the stretching behavior inside the model. And how do we do that? We do that with Z scripting, which I will go through in a little bit. Yep. So over here, if you look at the tree structure, we have a drawer, and we have a box, and then we have a knob, and we can define a parameter to the drawer, and then the box can have a program that reacts to, okay, what happens when that parameter changes, and if your box changes in width, then your knob probably wants to change in position as well. So how do we define programs? It's a Z scripting language that's written by Yoran a year and a half ago, something like that. And the reason why we did it, we didn't do it in CM, but we use a separate scripting language, you must be wondering, is because it makes it easier for us to port this to other systems. We don't want this model to only live within CT. It can be on Configure Classic, it can be on a web page, so you can have a web viewer for it if you implement an interpreter for this scripting language. So we want to keep this a bit independent. So why are we doing all this? What's the motivation behind? To unify, of course, like I said before. So we unify the 2D and the 3D. So we only write the code once, and there's less code to go through, lower barrier to entry. So what this means is that I'm sure everybody has done transforms with your models before, right? So if you transform your model in 3D, okay, great, now it's transformed. Oh, you need to do it for your graph. Okay, you try to take the code that worked for 3D, put it in the graph. Does it work? Sometimes, not always, right? But with CmSym, you only need to do it once. You apply transform to the node, and you get your 2D from there. So that's nice. Okay, so this is also the goal, why we want to start with CmSym, is because if you see, we have a giant class structure with primitive 3D and graph, and sometimes it's a lot to comb through. What exactly do I need? So the creators really wanted to keep it slim as possible. And that's the motivation, that they want to be a bit minimalist and a little bit disciplined. So you just try not to create a new component whenever you like, then make sure that you have everything you need with what we support. And there's a clear ownership that Jimmy and Jonas would be responsible. If you have something you need that's not in there, feel free to send them an email and tell them why you need it, and they'll most likely add it in for you. Okay, another motivation. Why is for fast edit operations. So how can we open the drawer of a unit of the chest of the drawer unit? So I think this video, if it would play, no, PowerPoint would crash on me. Oops. If I get my mouse back. Oops, sorry about this. PowerPoint crashed. And I can't figure out my mouse. We just do this for a second. There you go. Sorry about that. We go back there. If I go there. So here's a video of how we deal with the animation. Actually, this symbol is available in the CmSym test extension. You can try it out there, place it, and try to click it. So this was one of the goals, that we wanted it to be a bit faster, so that when we edit the sim node, it goes to the graphics backend directly. So we don't have to invalidate the whole thing all the time. And this is controlled by the parameters. So if your parameter change, it would only re-execute the programs that's related to that parameter. So it won't invalidate the entire thing all the time. It's more lightweight. So over here you can see there's two extreme examples. Well, one extreme example, that if you have a chair with 280,000 polygons, it brings it down to about a third of the size. And if you have a more realistic one with 20,000, it brings it down to around half. But in practice, we've seen it to be like on a half to 1/3 kind of scale if you convert the entire folder. So about this, I can make a note is that we have a way from the catalog creator to switch all your CM3D models to CmSym. Now in 9.5 it's still in beta, but in 9.0 it was already released. So you could just go ahead and tell your catalog guys that, okay, if you convert all these models to CmSym, it would be much smaller. And that's better for everyone. You have less data to download, less data to host. Yep. It's very easy to extend. So we're building it on top of Dex Object, which is it's a very flexible format. It's like a string to value. You can put in anything. So in the future, you want to put in light sources, keyframe animation, some physics into it, we can. It's not tight in any way. By the way, if you are coding with CmSym and then you find that, oh, there's something in the code about Dex, that's normally about streaming and loading. So to Dex, something is to pack it, to stream it into a CmSym, and then to unload it is just to read it back from the Dex format. That's all. You normally don't have to deal with this. This is just give you a bit background of what's happening at the back. We also support lazy loading. So for example, if you say, I just want the knob for now, it would go into the CmSym and just fetch the knob. It wouldn't fetch the other things. So I think this is much more helpful if you have a bigger model and then you just want to pick out parts of it. And I've had this scenario before. Sometimes you just want different parts of it and you don't want to bother with the rest. And having lazy loading would be really nice because you only want part of it. The rest of it, you don't have to care about it until you need it. So that's nice. And it happens in the background as well. Multi-platform. Yeah, so this is what I talked about earlier. So CmSym can work with CT, can work with Configure Classic, and who knows what it can work with in the future. It's just up to somebody to build an interpreter. So that's why we did it with the Z scripting language and all that. It's a very good rich format. Translation between different formats can go through the CmSym. So anything you want, just pop into Model App, save it as CmSym, and you can get it out back in SketchUp, CM3D, OBJ. These are like all supported by Model App, which is nice. And of course, parametric. When you have one file instead of 500 files to represent one symbol, it's much less data to download. It's, if you have to change something, you don't have to change it in 500 different files. You just change it once, so which is nice. What is new? So in the past about half a year, that they've been working on a few new things. One is to define the stretching in Model App. So before this, when this first got introduced to internal developers, they say, okay, you can only type it out. You can do the Z scripting like this, and this is how you stretch it. But of course, they thought about how catalog users would need to use this, and they need to define the models. So they made a UI for it, so it makes it very easy for you to just grab a model and then define the cut planes and how you want to stretch it. Yes?
Are you guys going to put out an instruction on how to do that?
Yeah, I think so.
In Model Lab?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, are you here today to kind of learn more about that rather than the programming side of it?
Yeah.
We'll have a couple of people here with you.
No, I sent it.
Okay, so we do not have documentation yet.
Okay. Yeah,
I
Sarah's done.
can show you.
Okay.
But anybody who's here that's not wanting to deal with it programmatically,
Yeah. Yeah. I can show you how it's done here as well. If my mouse can, there we go.
we're good at that stuff.
So you just click on the first point, the second point, that's where you want your connect points, and then the third point would be where you want to insert the cut plane. And then over here you see that they're doing the same for the height, and then we're doing it a bit differently for the depth. So first point, second point, and then over here you see that he inserted 2 cut planes. And then now we can just stretch it. And this is not just in Model App. He can also put it in the drawing. And then there's some quick properties there. If you bring a CmSym into the drawing, it automatically becomes a sim file snapper, and it gets all the stretch properties as quick properties. And then you can play around with them like that. And that's just from a model.
We're done with the catalog creator that we have.
We are working on catalog creator integration right now. I can't say for sure when it will be ready, but we're definitely working on it. We're more looking like late 9.5 or 10 or something like that.
Presumably support somewhere for minimum, maximum, and increments.
Yes, and that's actually already supported in the catalog creator. It's just that it doesn't do anything, but I think that would be linked up because in the catalog creator you can put in the code range and the min, the max. So I believe that should be possible. I can write that down just in case.
That'll be very helpful.
All right. Okay. What else have we been working on? Okay, we've been working on something called Sim Connect Point. So this is like connect points within the model. So you can define Sim connect point is like a component. You can define it here. Okay, this is the front view of the table, and this is the leg, and this is the tabletop. So you just need to define the two attached points over there, and then you define the connect point here, and then you don't. And when you manipulate your top, the rest of the model just moves with it. So you don't have to move it anymore. So yeah, this is a little bit different from what I showed you before with the table and the legs, because when you put a cut plane on the table and the legs, that's kind of looking at it at the whole model. But this is more like part of the model. I want this to stay here forever. I want this to stay here forever. And then when you stretch it, then those points will follow. But the thing about this is that we just did the backend for it. You can code it, but there's no real UI support for it yet. So we might be working on that in the future. Yep, so from the words of the creator, this is the most important slide in the whole presentation, because this is where you can get more information. So if you go into CM format, CmSym README, there are some links there that will point you to the tutorials and the exercises as well. We have some CmSym extension that shows some example snappers, and then the links to wiki and FAQ. So we'll get there in a minute. Okay, support training for developers using CmSym. So that's what Jimmy is working really hard on right now. So when we have issues using CmSym, we go to him directly, and then he'll try to help us with it. So support for developers using CmSym. And Sim Connect Point UI, like I said, we did the backend for the connect point, but there's no UI for it yet. So that's what we're going to work on. And of course, undo redo in Model Lab. Who has been frustrated with that? Yeah. I watched him work on it. Like, I swear, he's really working on it. So yeah, he's working on that. But I don't think it will be the first release of 9.5, but eventually down the road of 9.5, I believe. That is all for the theory part. Do we have any questions? Yes. You mean from the catalog side?
Yeah, well, yeah, but to do that, is there anything that you have to do so that you can do some part of it? Or will it just integrate?
Okay. It depends if your extension is using the CM3Ds. If you have a hard dependency on the CM3D files, and you probably have a URL somewhere that says look for this CM3D somewhere, then you have to change that. But if you're also going deep into CM3D, grab a specific layer, then that probably is not going to work anymore. But if we're talking about generic catalog extensions, that's going to work just fine.
And so if you do convert it all,
Yep.
you upload your CmSym,
Yep.
you can immediately delete all of your CM3Ds off the server, and everybody's going to be able to access the CmSyms.
Yeah, it should be like that. Yep. Some customers have already started using it.
Question. You have a timeline, CmSym implementation and release. That way we know where you're sitting and what to expect when.
Okay, so CmSym was actually released earlier. It's just that we haven't really been using it. And before everybody starts to get on board, we don't really know what's the issues that's going to come. So
That's exactly my point. See where we're sitting and what part of the project are we seeing it. You know, you are still in beta. It's going to be released on this, and
Technically, it's still beta, and we're not feature complete yet, but and what we need is customer projects to come on board, find where these problems lie, what else they need to add to it. So, I will, actually, I do, I promise I won't break it.
Because you never touch it.
If you say convert all of this up to CmSym, then this is in data.
Yeah.
It is, from a model perspective, it's easy. So for catalog creator and just replacing your symbols, you'll be fine, but I don't know that there's a game doing it other than the model size.
We converted a lot of ours.
Right.
They will seem
It
just
doesn't really
just
just
the file size.
And in the long run, you're gonna see even less file size, and you're gonna have way less files.
And actually, internally, when we have new projects in Configure, we have to use CmSym now because we have to try it out, our stuff first, right? Before it gets to you. So.
You're on the
Any more questions before we start diving into the code?
When you're putting in the sizes, you were mentioning earlier about the min, the max, and like the step size.
Yep.
So I know in programming we're able to do that as well, but every once in a while we'll have products that have certain gaps.
Yeah.
And we're able to, with the programming, provide a list of the available sizes.
Yes.
It's like dynamic domains.
Yeah, I actually don't know how we're going to support that just yet, but I can get back to you. But I see it as it will be a kind of integration with the catalog creator, whether you want to control it with just the min and max and the intervals or a flat list. But
I think at least the idea now is that those domains will be pulled out of the data. So you could define the weird domain, I guess, is that in data. Yeah. Programmatically, it's probably easy enough to work around, I think. It's really when you're just dealing with it from a model app perspective, a symbol bringing it in, looking at using data. Now how do you do that? Something like this. Not quite everything. Yeah.
And sometimes before we have, the smart extension, we're using just a catalog graph, we can pull it in. But in that case, we won't be able to validate for the ones that are invalid size.
yeah, that's true.
As you finish development on this, one thing that smaller manufacturers would be very interested in is seeing complete control of those domains managed through the catalog creator. They don't have CM programmers on staff necessarily.
Yep.
And we love to do program manufacturers, but we want to do it where it makes sense. And if they can control these domains and they offer new product sizes,
Yep.
introducing themselves to the catalog creator without calling us those domains.
No.
You might still be using the same model and similar customers with maybe even